Kia ora, I'm Chelsea Daniels, and this is The Front Page, a daily podcast presented by the New Zealand Herald. US President Donald Trump has reaffirmed his close relationship with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. In a meeting with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung, he said he hopes to meet with Kim later this year, saying, "I look forward to seeing him. We got along great." Meanwhile, in an unusual move, Kim has recently released a highly emotive video of a ceremony for fallen soldiers in Pyongyang who died fighting for Russia. So, what is Kim's game plan here? And how should New Zealand proceed if talks turn sour? Today on The Front Page, International Relations Professor Robert Patman is with us to unpack the latest. First off, Robert, Donald Trump has been touting his friendly relationship with Kim Jong-un while meeting South Korea's Lee Jae-myung. Lee asked Trump to meet with Kim. Why would this be?
Well, that's because in his first administration, Mr. Trump surprised many people by entering into correspondence with the North Korean dictator and meeting him. Unfortunately, although Mr. Trump hailed his dialogue with the North Korean dictator, it didn't achieve progress in getting rid of North Korea's nuclear capability, and it did not produce progress in reducing the tension with South Korea and North Korea. Remember, those two countries are divided, and both do not fully recognise the sovereignty of the other. Once again, Mr. Trump has talked up his relationship with the North Korean dictator, but he even claimed, actually, in the recent comments that he knew Kim Jong-un better than anyone, except for his sister, which is an extraordinary claim. I'm sure the people who have to work for the North Korean dictator on a daily basis might be prepared to trade praises with Mr. Trump. But, it's an extraordinary claim, and I just think we have to take it with a pinch of salt.
I also noted that he said something along the lines of, we also talked about all kinds of things, even things that we probably shouldn't have been talking about. What do you make of Trump's being so happy to make such a show of how great friends they are? I mean, this is a dictator we're talking about here, not just any old leader. Yeah, but Mr. Trump
feels very comfortable talking to dictators. He's got a real soft spot for Vladimir Putin, which is Vladimir Putin presides over a murderous regime which has invaded a neighbouring country, which has turned out catastrophically for both Ukraine and Russia. So we shouldn't be surprised about that. He also, Mr. Trump likes to put the emphasis on himself as a deal maker, and that sort of emphasis on being a deal maker ties in with this sort of narrative that he's got special relationships with some of the most feared people in the world, such as Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. So I think he's hyping up leverage with the North Koreans, but there's no evidence that North Korea have actually delivered anything in terms of substance, in terms of the relationship between Trump and Kim Jong-un.
Well, since Trump's January inauguration, Kim has apparently ignored all of his repeated calls to revive these talks. I mean, what are the chances of this sudden display of interest persuading Kim to pick up the phone?
Given that he's been chipping away, he's been trying to reactivate the dialogue, I can't see, Kim Jong-un may respond, but he'll want that relationship on his own terms. And I think he's happy to flatter Mr. Trump and even have high-profile meetings. But Kim Jong-un is not going to give up his nuclear weapons for President Trump. And he's not going to give up his claim to be the true leader of all Korea, including South Korea. I'm not really sure what Mr. Trump is hoping for. North Korea is linked to Russia. North Korea recently provided around 15,000 troops for the Russian. It supported the Russian invasion of Ukraine by allowing Russian troops to be stationed in Kursk, which was, as a result of the Russian invasions, the Ukrainians launched a counter invasion, mini invasion of Kursk, and the North Koreans certainly lost quite a lot of troops. About 5% of the deployment were killed, and there's about 600 troops. And North Korea's relationship with Russia has bloomed, mainly because Russia is pretty desperate. It has, apart from China and North Korea, it's got a shortage of friends. And what was good from Vladimir Putin's point of view is that North Korea has a big army. It wasn't battle tested, not since 1953, but it provided a lot of troops, and it also provided ammunition and artillery shells. And it could provide more troops, according to speculation. But this is coming at a price. Kim Jong-un probably sees this as a lucrative relationship because he gets a certain amount of money for every troop each month that's deployed. We don't know the exact amount, but it's rumored to be in the vicinity of $1,200 US to $1,500 US. I'm not sure all that money goes to the families concerned. But yeah, I mean, maybe Mr. Trump believes by reactivating the relationship with North Korea, he might be able to weaken the relationship between China and North Korea, but also the relationship between Russia and North Korea. On the other hand, he may see this as complementary to his efforts of wooing Russia, because Russia, the administration has quite openly spoken about a geopolitical alliance with Vladimir Putin's Russia, which, as I say, has flagrantly broken international law of its invasion of Ukraine. And I think part of the motivation is the administration believes, in my view, mistakenly, that the way to undermine China's challenge to the United States is to separate Russia and China. But, you know, the counter-argument is if Mr. Trump supports Vladimir Putin and wants the war to be settled on Putin's terms, that is that the Russians can keep land they illegally stole from Ukraine, China will watch that and see that as American weakness. They do not regard Russia as a superpower. They see Russia for what it is, a regional country with an economy the size of Spain. And so China, far from being diminished by American support for Putin, could be emboldened by any settlement that rewarded Putin's aggression by stepping up their own pressure in the Indo-Pacific region. And of course, that's of great concern to New Zealand, because it's no secret that we've become concerned about Chinese assertiveness in relation to the Solomons and the Cook Islands.
Would you go back to the DMZ to meet with the North Korean leader?
I loved it. Remember when I walked across the line and everyone went crazy? Especially Secret Service, I would say they were going. I have a very good relationship. I understand them. I spent a lot of free time with them talking about things that we probably aren't supposed to talk about. And, I get along with him really well. I think he has a country of great potential, tremendous potential.
When we talk about Kim Jong-un, for the first time, he has acknowledged the deaths of over 100 troops who were fighting for Russia in Ukraine. A video of a ceremony honouring them has been released with an emotional-looking Kim praising the fighting spirit of the heroes. I mean, first off, how unusual is this display from Kim Jong-un? And secondly, why release this video now?
That's a good question. It is unusual, but North Korean watchers say this is a most unusual move. So why has Kim Jong-un taken this step? It may be an attempt to articulate and demonstrate displeasure to Putin for being excluded from the discussions that have been going on between Russia, the United States, and the Ukraine and the Europeans about some sort of peace settlement. I mean, North Korea is, like Russia, pretty isolated internationally. This is speculation on my part. None of us really know. But there have been rumors of tension between Putin and Kim Jong-un. I think both have an interest in downplaying that and presenting themselves as, very closely aligned. But Kim Jong-un may well believe that by honouring, publicly recognising the dead of North Koreans who fought on Putin's side, it's a reminder to the Russian leadership not to take this support for granted. There haven't been too many incidences, of course, to compare this situation with, because North Korea has been quite an insular state, and while it has a large, enormous army, actually, it's largely been focused on dealing with the tensions with neighbouring South Korea.
Well, North Korea does remain one of the world's most closed societies. I mean, how important is it, especially at a time like this with these geopolitical tensions, that the world remain in contact with regimes like that one?
Well, from Kim Jong-un's point of view, I mean, the economy of North Korea is really struggling and has been for a long time. And that was one of the motivations, I think, for North Korea lending a helping hand to Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, because it created economic opportunities that it didn't have before. It was able to transfer a lot of aging stockpiles of military equipment that were not being used to Russia and get well paid for it. And secondly, the regime has benefited financially by supporting Putin's invasion by sending troops. I suppose that Kim Jong-un would like, ideally, other countries to begin to take an interest in, by ending isolation. I suppose Kim Jong-un would hope that there will be opportunities for greater investment in North Korea. But in my view, it's a bit of a fantasy, because I think that there's always this problem for authoritarian regimes. They want to remain very strict control, but that's actually inconsistent or at odds with having a vibrant economy, which often involves the private sector, which they're not keen on, because that means that their control is limited. So, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. And it may be a way of prodding China. China has consistently kept Kim Jong-un afloat until it signed a defense pact with Russia last year. Until that moment last year, China had been the major ally of North Korea. And the Chinese, I think, tolerate Kim Jong-un. They're irritated by him, particularly his mercurial style of leadership. He sometimes ignores their advice about testing weapons, and he does his own thing. But his regime largely depends on Chinese support for survival, and it provides both food and energy. Why does it do that if it finds Kim Jong-un such a pain in the rear? Probably because their nightmare scenario would be, if they didn't support Kim Jong-un, the regime would collapse, and that South Korea would probably, with its vibrant democracy, quickly spread to North Korea, and the country will be unified on a democratic market economy basis, and that's what they just don't want.
Let's say Trump does get a meeting with Kim Jong-un and they discuss de-escalation measures. And what if, in a world where Trump says, look, there's talk of sanctions relief, how would New Zealand's strict anti-nuclear and sanctions policies be affected by that? Because, of course, no business in New Zealand can do business with North Korean businesses, for example, because of these sanctions that have been in place for so long.
Well, I think, New Zealand won't be in a hurry to activate economic contacts with North Korea. We have a very good relationship with South Korea, and I don't think we'd do anything to jeopardize that. And it's interesting that President Lee, who succeeded President Hoon, the new president, relatively new president of South Korea, has welcomed President Trump's interest in a dialogue with Kim Jong-un because the South Korean government does want to improve relations with North Korea, but has so far been impervious or indifferent to South Korea's attempts to improve relations. It's no secret that President Yoon took a much more matter-of-fact stance towards North Korea and didn't try and in any way gloss over the fact that North Korea is run by a dictatorship. It may be the new government is more pragmatic and is prepared to try to improve relations. It's certainly showing efforts in that way. And maybe Mr. Trump could be helpful in that. But as for the reasons we've gone through, apart from atmospherics, I can't see what can be achieved substantively. It seems to me that South Korea and the United States would love North Korea to get rid of their nuclear capability. But from Kim Jong-un's point of view, that's his ace, that's his ace in the pack. Why would he get rid of a serious deterrent? Let's be clear, from North Korea's point of view, and perhaps from Iran's point of view, one of the things that deters what they see as Western-backed aggression or Western interference is the reality that North Korea has a nuclear weapon. So they believe that's the most important guarantor of the dictatorship that Kim Jong-un runs. So I can't see any compromise there. So, yeah, I mean, it seems to me that there's very limited scope for a significant improvement.
Thanks for joining us, Robert.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of The Front Page. You can read more about today's stories and extensive news coverage at nzherald.co.nz. The Front Page is produced by Jane Yee and Richard Martin, who is also our editor. I'm Chelsea Daniels. Subscribe to The Front Page on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, and tune in tomorrow for another look behind the headlines.